This panel is sponsored by Farmers and Merchants State Bank and Securitech. Our first speaker, Dr. Ammar Al-Khafaji of W Investors Group. Dr. Ammar Al-Khafaji is something of an Energizer bunny. When I met with him recently, we talked about everything that he's working on in his life. I mean, in his residency school, he's developing deals with his family. He's got a pipeline of over 1,000 multifamily units. I mean, there's nothing that he can't do. And I asked him, how much can you do? And he's like, I want to do a lot. So it's really an exciting opportunity for me to introduce you to have a conversation about the next generation of developer. I mean, we're talking about a young man that's in his 20s here that's actively doing deals. I'm really excited to introduce you. Let's welcome him to the stage, Dr. Ammar Al-Khafaji. Ron Boji has been president and CEO of the Boji Group since its formation more than 25 years ago, and guiding development, construction management, and property management of more than 3 million square feet, notably in Lansing, and now you're seeing his name and signs everywhere in downtown Birmingham. He's spearheaded and really become a master of public-private partnerships, a term many people are starting to get a little bit more familiar with, but Ron and his team have been active and able to produce more than 1 million square feet throughout the state. And his focus is also in wholesale services, convenience stores, retail, fuel, and hospitality industries. There's really nothing Ron hasn't touched in terms of commercial real estate, and it's really an honor for me to introduce you to him. Let's welcome Ron Boji to the stage. Our next speaker is Rob Graham from Farmers and Merchants State Bank. He's been in the banking industry for more than 24 years. He is actively looking to place money. In fact, he drove here directly from Ohio. He wants me to tell everyone in the room that he's got a car full of money for the deals that you have. He's happy to look at every single opportunity ahead of him. He's also looking for deposits, looking to grow his brand here in the Michigan. Let's welcome Rob Graham, Senior Vice President, Farmers and Merchants State Bank. Next up is the next generation leadership of Singh Development. Singh has been in business since 1973. They're doing real estate throughout the country, notably in Michigan, iconic properties, North Carolina and Virginia, leading the second generation for his family. And we're excited to introduce you. Some of you have met him here before through my network, but let's introduce Saab Grewal. And rounding out our panel with more than 20 years of experience in the security industry, Rudy has more than earned his title of expert. You might think, what exactly does security have to do with mixed-use development? I will tell you everything. Before you get your shovel in the ground, you want to have a conversation with somebody like Rudy Petros, engineer. He understands the technology that it takes to protect your building, to protect your assets, and Rudy is happiest to tell you that all of his clients sleep well at night. Let's welcome Rudy Petros to the stage. And finally, he's a senior reporter covering all things commercial real estate. He really doesn't need an introduction to the commercial real estate community, but I'm very pleased to say thank you to Kirk Pinno for moderating this session. Thank you, Kirk.
Hi everyone, thanks for showing up, and if anyone needs me after this, I'll be trying to locate Rob's car.
I got the keys.
What was that?
I have the keys.
Oh, I should have known. Thanks again for coming out. I'm looking forward to this discussion. I think that probably the appropriate place to start out, given what I'm sure everyone saw was a big push alert from the Journal this morning, was the increase in interest rates. I guess we'll start with the developers on the panel and finance. How is that affecting projects that you're working on, and what do you anticipate seeing in the future?
As the banker, go ahead.
Rob?
The advantage you have is a lot of the community banks are very flush with cash. Like we mentioned in the last panel, there's still a lot of liquidity. So naturally, rates should probably be moving into the 5s, but a lot of the competition has kept rates in the 4s. That is good for developers. Does that impact tight deals? Obviously. So Does it mean deals require more equity? Does it mean they require better sponsors? Of course. But yes, rates are coming up. It's great for my P&L. Maybe make some deals not so great.
So I listened earlier to the multifamily panel, which did a phenomenal job, and hats off to them. When you get into the mixed-use environment, it is a little bit different. The multifamily environment is able to have a longer fixed rate, whether it's to the government level or not. But yet in a mixed-use development, we're more with a traditional lender. So you're not going to get more than 3 or 5 year stints, maybe 7 at most, to really stabilize the opportunity. But what I think this has shown us is we've been in a fantasy world for many years. And if you're doing deals where you're depending upon 2, 3, 4% interest rates or even 3% interest rates to make your deals work, those aren't the deals you should be looking at. So I think it's more conventional in what we're doing today. If you looked over time, 7% is really the industry standard over the last 50 years. So we've been very fortunate in what's taken place, but this increase is not the worst thing in the world because it will be a great correction for all of us.
Yeah, I just to chime in a little bit, been in a 12-year bull market, right? It's been great for everybody in this room, but I think all of us can agree there's far too many Mercedes G-Wagons on the road, right? They used to be a rare car. Now it's like every other car down the street, right? Especially here in Birmingham, right? I'm sure we'll go outside, we'll see one right here. Rates are going to bump up 50 basis points next week, right? The European Central Bank announced this morning, right, that, or was it last night, that their rates are going up for the first time in many, many years. The multifamily panel talked about rising construction costs. It was back when I was an analyst in a banking industry in the early 2000s, we used to pro forma out deals, right? And you just sit there and say, your revenues are going to grow 5% every year, every year, every year. Well, with your costs going up and your rates going up, how much further can your revenues increase to support that margin, right? And so the guys that are going to be able to weather this storm are the ones that are long-term holders, right? I think the merchant builders are probably going to see a little bit of a downtick. If you're holding and you're well capitalized, right, and your lenders can be creative, there's still room for housing in this country. So, I think we're in for maybe a bit of a slowdown. Rates are going to cause that. I mean, traditionally that's what it's supposed to do, but there's still room for growth.
Amar, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, and then also with the rise in interest rate, it does also open up opportunity on the acquisition side of things. People are starting to realize now that their properties do have these hurdles involved with them that, in terms of the rise in construction costs as well as these rise in interest rates, they can't expect you to close in 30 days without any due diligence anymore. Or, you need to have that proper timing to really follow through with these developments, especially when you're doing a large-scale mixed-use development, and give you that opportunity to really get, your T's crossed and your I's dotted to make sure that you can make this development happen. So, it is give and take. With the rise in interest rates, you might have more opportunities on the acquisition side to get these developments going as well. So you got to look at the optimistic side of everything as well.
Amar, you led nicely into the next area of concern, which is construction costs. We just saw a story this morning about the Hudson site increasing to, godforsaken, $1.4 billion. And sorry, I'm not speaking to the mic, I don't think, so apologies. What sort of impacts are you seeing on project budgets given the increase in labor and materials costs?
Well, to start off, we're seeing a large increase in terms of construction costs. We were building multifamily back in 2020 for $130 to $150 a foot. Same exact product today is about $215 a foot. We're getting budgeted on. You're talking 2 years. And not only that, it's the lead times on a lot of materials that you don't even think about. Insulation for roofing and other things are 12 weeks out. Appliances are 4 months out. You really have to get all your trades locked in early. And, a lot of the quality of trades is going down because people are just so busy these days. And we are hopefully starting to see, I heard Michael talking about some of the trades are calling him now and saying we do have an opportunity now to take some work on if you have anything available. So with these rising construction costs, hopefully we will see that things will start to temper down in terms of allowing us to continue these developments and get that quality type product. But everything's getting passed down to the consumer. People can only afford a certain amount of rent, if it's your resale tenant as well as your multifamily type of apartment renter. So we really do need to make things affordable, and it's difficult with these construction costs these days.
So inside of the mixed-use developments, it's normally a mid-rise to high-rise construction. So that's going to be a different construction style. Okay, it's not going to be your traditional lumber. It's going to be a podium style. Maybe it's concrete, steel up above, or really what's being big right now in the mixed use is concrete all the way up, which allows the sound barrier not to be impacted. With those kind of factors that are taking place and construction costs is rising, it makes your general contractor, your construction manager, imperative in who you pick. So we're blessed in Michigan to have probably some of the finest construction managers around, whether it be Walbridge or Clark or Saxe or Chrisman or many of the other ones that are around, and you've got to depend upon them. And so when you sit down and you go through your numbers and you're sitting with your architect and your engineer, you've got to be ready for at least 3 meetings with them of design, engineering, and bringing down the numbers. Because if you think the first time it's going to come out and you're going to hit your number, you better get out of the game.
Stop.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Thankfully, I mean, with these commodities markets, I mean, you've seen lumber prices come down significantly over the last few weeks. But, you know, in the last couple of weeks, if you pay attention to the financial markets, you know, Target and Walmart and Amazon came out and said when they didn't hit their earnings, said they were too heavy, right? They hired too many people, they held too much inventory, right? And so you're seeing steel prices drop here very recently. And the rumor is that Amazon's slowing down, right? And so Amazon caused a rocketing of steel prices, right? And so, you know, as markets right size, I think things are going to start to flatten out a bit. But as we know in this country, wages had to go up. I don't think wages are one of those things. Maybe it'll come down a little bit, but the wages as it relates to the building industry will continue to creep up. And, you know, I'm sure these guys are experiencing the same thing. In the past, we could lock in pricing, right? So if you're in 2018 and you got lucky and you locked in pricing for a development, you know, unfortunately for some of those vendors or trades, they may have not made it out on that one, right? And today, their deal is going to sit there and say that you're sharing the burden with them. And that's just the reality of today. And I think we all expect that that's going to happen.
I don't think it's just construction cost, it's also time. So when you structure your lending, make sure you consider, you know, give yourself an extra 6 months. You know, it used to be, hey, we're going to do a year interest only. That's your construction period. Those days are long gone. The timing on these things have become a lot longer. That's for certain.
I don't want to let Rudy sit there for too long.
It's good company. I'm enjoying myself.
I do want to get into the, you know, your field of specialty in security in buildings and sites and whatnot. Can you talk a little bit about how that's folding into projects around town?
The developers on here, I'm lucky to have them as clients. Security and technology is the go-to. So we talked about guys not buying starter homes in the last panel. So what are they doing? They're getting an apartment. Well, nowadays they're working from home too. So if you don't have super speed Wi-Fi, they're going to be pissed off. If the cell phones don't work, that's going to be an issue. They want technology. They want security. You know, every day in our news cycle, we're hearing about a shooting or we're hearing about a crime or all these things. So they want to make sure they're safe, their kids are safe. It's a lot different than what us older guys grew up with, where everybody had a white picket fence and the kids played in the backyard and they never came out. Now they're living in an apartment and they want to make sure that their kids are safe. So it's a mixture on what Securitech and what we bring to the table with technology to make it an easier place to live, right? And then the security side. So there's a lot that we do from the get-go, whether it's an apartment complex or whether it's a hotel or shopping center, whatever it is. Everybody's a little bit different. So, but it's something that you got to figure out and talk, because it also becomes a selling point. You know, when you're leasing an apartment and you want to say, hey, we have a safe community here, and this is why we're safe. You're going to have access to, say, your cameras. You're going to know who's coming up to your door. Nobody can walk into the building. The parking structure closes properly so nobody can follow you in. There's so many different things from a safety perspective that you can actually use as a sales tool to bring in those tenants. So now you're getting that young executive who used to buy a house. He doesn't want to cut his own grass. He wants to live in a penthouse at the Griffin or wherever he's at, and he wants to know he's safe. He wants to know his G-Wagon is safe in the garage, and he wants to know nobody's following him in. And, you know, if somebody comes to visit him, he knows who they are and he's letting them in properly.
Dude, you are bringing everything full circle, and it's amazing.
I try.
So I'm going to say what Derek talked about when he introduced Rudy, and he said, if you're looking at a mixed-use development and you don't go to Rudy or somebody of his type of style before you break ground, then you're already too late. Because in a mixed use, there are multiple entry levels, whether it's the parking garage below grade, whether it's the retail facet that's interjecting with the commercial side, whether it's a common lobby that is your residential units and your office user going, whether it's your common amenities up above. There's so many points of egress and entering. If you're not secured, you're already in a tough situation. And that's another selling point, and we've been able to see that in our different mixed-use developments, amenities and security, to actually get 10 cents more, 15 cents more, so you differentiate yourself between others.
Yeah, I think it boils down to access control. I think that's what Rudy provides us. And when you're doing a mixed-use development, you got several different types of users, right, at different times of the day, right? And being able to regulate that building to make it safe and secure is extremely important. And also, I mean, it flows downstream, right? I mean, if you really want to get a great insurance rate, you better have a lot of these things in place. So I think, yeah, guys like Rudy and guys of his caliber add a lot of value to your development.
Amar, you want to chime in on any of that?
I completely agree with that. I mean, with, like Ron was saying, with multiple points of entry, with your underground parking and all this, having the key fob entry and being able to time it and other things, and you're, if you're having residential in your mixed-use building, having an Amazon package room so your packages are secure and other things of that nature is a really big amenity that is a must these days. And it's a big mess when you have over 100 tenants and packages are just thrown at the door, and a lot of the stuff is valuable. People are shipping everything through Amazon these days. So having a sizable room and going with someone like Rudy to understand the size of that, as well as camera systems and where you need cameras and where you can really be efficient and avoid those points of entry to really get, VEing today's huge. So he would really be able to help early on in the early stages to make sure that you limit, points of entry, but still have it accessible as well.
So obviously this is a panel on mixed use, and we have a mixture of uses to talk about. First one I want to get to is the office sector and how that's playing out. I don't think it's really a surprise to anyone that it's been, let's say, troubled during the pandemic. What sort of trends are you seeing, either in terms of what tenants want or what they need in order to start coming back to the office on a more regular basis?
So I'll probably start that off because that's where we started our career 25 years ago in the office industry, all around private-public partnerships, really around the government, around medical, but all of the office sector itself. So it is changing with COVID, absolutely right. And I heard another interesting part on the multifamily where, and it could be used even in mixed use, where they're actually making a working office environment as an amenity. I thought that was very, very intuitive. But from the office sector, what's taking place is COVID is allowing organizations to restructure the flow of how the office environment is. That doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means there's a correction. And it needed the pandemic to take place for this correction to happen. But it was already happening even before the pandemic. It just exacerbated it. So what's taking place right now is law firms, architectural firms, any firms that's out there that have 40, 50, 60,000 square feet on multi-floors are looking to downsize their space, but not necessarily because people are just because they're working from home. No, because they need to be more versatile and they need more opportunities inside of that office space. So I think the office sector, what's going to take place is from an absorption, you're going to see less construction of office space take place. You're going to see the prime real estate communities with Class A or B plus office buildings surviving. And your Class C buildings are going to do what's happened and evolved over time. They're just going to become something else. Whether they become a storage facility, residential environment. But I do see the office sector, although there's a lull right now, it's not the worst thing in the world because that just means less new construction is going to be coming online and the true Class A buildings are going to be able to prosper in the communities that need to be.
Rob, what are you seeing on the underwriting and lending side for office?
It is very difficult to underwrite office in this environment. Do the great sponsors still get office deals done? But if you're speculating in office, good heavens, that is very, you might have to go see 20 banks to get one to even pick up the phone. So yes, the commercial banks obviously have serious concerns about office and the future of office. It's interesting, does COVID create you needing more space because you've got to spread out more? But I'm seeing loan requests from professional services firms looking to go from like 3 floors to 1. It's costing them a couple $1 million a TI, but their rent being cut down really changes. It's still cheaper to pay me and pay the lower rent. But yeah, it becomes very problematic, obviously, for banks.
Does anyone else want to chime in on office use?
I guess we're kind of blessed not to have a significant office portfolio. But I'll tell you, throughout the pandemic, our office portfolio has done well. And I think it's because we have small office buildings with entrepreneurs as our tenants, right? And so they're still using their office space. If you come to our office on Orchard Lake, our parking lot's full. But obviously the big users in this town, like the DTEs of the world, or the Blue Crosses and the GMs and Fords, those lots are sitting empty, right? And so I think Ron's right. There's going to be a reshuffling of uses probably on some of the subpar office assets in this town. But again, where do we stand in terms of work culture going forward? I think that's yet to be told.
We saw a little bit of this in the last recession where people would call from our side on the technology side, hey, we're reducing our space from 50,000 square feet to 25 across the street or in a different suite. We need you to come move all of our stuff. We're starting to see that again now. Now, it's not because of a recession. It's just because they don't have so many employees there. They're allowing their employees to work from home, so they don't need all that square footage. So I think you're going to see shuffling of people downsizing the square footage they need and allowing some people to work from home. And that might be the new norm, unless people start listening to Elon Musk, who says nobody can work from home. So,
But I will add one item that is imperative to the office sector. It's all about live, work, and play. That's a very important facet to the office sector. People want to be able to spend their normal work day in a great environment, have their lunches, have their dinners, breakfast in that environment, and then whether they go in the same building or in the neighboring area, walk to their residency. So if you can build a community that embraces the walkability of live, work, and play, your office sector is going to do great.
Or
Then the only thing I would add is to also differentiate as a specific type of office is medical office. We are doing a lot of new construction in terms of medical office. As a medical resident right now, I can tell you a lot of my patients do not want to be in the hospital or do not want to be seen in an office that's connected to the hospital. With COVID and other things right now, people don't feel safe going into hospital environments. So when they are able to have easy access in an outpatient center, and that's why you see, Beaumont, Henry Ford doing these large outpatient centers, which are these multidisciplinary clinics that really incorporate everyone into one place. It's a one-stop shop. You have your nephrologist, you have your optometrist, you have your family medicine doctor, everyone there, and it's a clean, new, sanitary building that people feel comfortable going to. And we're doing pretty well in that sector and, developing new office. But I agree with everyone else on the other aspects of office that, there are some hardships there. And I don't know, Ron, if you have anything to chime in on that.
That's a great point. We were very blessed in Royal Oak, as people probably read about. We didn't have to go to 20 banks. We went to one and started on spec in Royal Oak. And it was meant to be all office. And, some of life's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers. Google looked at us and wanted to come onto our development, but with all the different issues that were taking place, they decided to go to Detroit. Well, lo and behold, Henry Ford came and said, we want the whole 145,000 square feet for a medical office building, and it's a one-stop shopping. So our own item itself that took place. So that's office, but that's a different office. That wasn't here 20 years ago. That wasn't here 15 years ago.
How about on the retail side of things? What sort of trends are you guys seeing in terms of users, and have things sort of picked up from the early days of the pandemic when things were shut down, I guess?
I think for a mixed-use development, it's going to be whatever's a resource to the other users in that space. That's important, totally important. I think today you got to go with the mindset of a curated retail approach. See Angela sitting right there in front. She's helping us in Royal Oak, right? And again, we're targeting folks that are really going to add value to the other users in the building. We all know that the people that are selling you hard goods, they got hammered, right? And so, they went into online sales and all that kind of stuff, right? But anybody that can provide you a service is really, truly somebody that's probably going to add value to your building today and maybe be successful within the next 5-10 years. Hopefully for as long as they can at least pay you on the amount of money you put in their space to build it out.
So I'm going to compliment Angela as well and her great work that she's done. Retail has become an experience. That's what's important. You cannot get an experience, although these things that my kids wear and the hat and whatever it is, and they have this virtual thing, they call that an experience. I don't know about that, but you have to have you cannot make an experience on buying on Amazon. You cannot make an experience by going online and buying this item. Hence, in Birmingham, you see what's happened. The famous, if there's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King and a Wendy's, and the Burger King and the Wendy's don't do a market study just because McDonald's did, and if they open, it has to work. Restoration Hardware. RH came into town. What happens? Crate and Barrel comes into town. Serena Lilly comes into town. Circle Lighting comes into town. So that kind of retail is sparked by an experience of something taking place. And then when you bring something that creates an experience, then the other amenities come with it.
Mark?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's going off this mixed use, where it's the live, work, and play kind of all goes hand in hand. We develop more in suburban areas and doing a residential development in the back with retail up front, making sure you have those amenities for the people living in the back, which is your coffee, your food, your other services. It really does attract tenants, and it also does attract tenants on both sides for the retail as well as the residential. In White Lake, we're adding a Beyond Juice and a Detroit Wing Company right in front of our multifamily development there, and the tenants are super excited about it. And those tenants specifically came there because of the multifamily in the back in an area that hadn't seen development in 15 years. So, the mixed use really is a nice niche that allows everyone to have a win-win situation and have a cohesive development that everyone can enjoy.
Rob, Rudy, either you want to chime in either on the lending or on the security side for retail?
On the security side, it really doesn't affect us too much on the security side. I think that it's great. I think that I would love to be able to go get a Beyond Juice or a Starbucks, 200 feet away from my front door. I think it makes a ton of sense. I think that's the future.
Rob?
I think lending for retail is more attractive than office. It's much easier to get done. The funny part about retail is, the banks always used to turn our nose up on restaurants, and now all of a sudden they feel, hey, this sounds pretty good. Pins are Amazon proof. So, yeah, the banks are still reasonably favorable towards retail. Obviously, the tenants, they look for the experience. The banks look for credit-worthy tenants. So
Magic word, Amazon proof.
yeah, exactly.
Experience. It's all about an experience.
I think Joey Agri probably has something to say about that a little bit later. So
We're lead developers on a downtown project in suburban Raleigh, near the Research Triangle Park, and there's a lot of Fortune 500 companies, research companies that want to build campuses there, and so it's a large mixed-use development, and trying to work with our lenders on how to put that together to make sure that funding's appropriate. When we look at some of our retail and commercial office space, a lot of it's flexing. Something that could be, like how we look at it today, 5 years from now when the development's done, the market may be completely different, right? So we got to be able to be flexible in how we build these spaces so that it could be used as office or retail or something else.
COVID obviously upended a lot of things. And I think one of the things that is probably here to stay, at least for a little while, is sort of the incorporation of outdoor amenities into projects. What are you guys seeing with regards to that element of the development process?
So that's what's a differentiator today. In these mixed uses opportunities versus previous mixed uses that were done 10 years ago or so, if you do not have them, you've automatically lost. So in many of our mixed-use developments, we're adding rooftop amenities. We're activating the rooftop. That's extremely important. And especially in mid-rises, you feel more like you're part of the actual vibrance on the ground area versus if you're 20 stories high or something, you don't feel it as much. So amenities such as pools, cabanas, live activities, obviously from a workout environment. You also see a lot more amenities for pets. That's what's taking place as well. I'm not a huge pet fan, so I don't know, but that's a big thing right now. You've got to include all of those amenities that are all part of it, along with all the different beautifications or things of that nature. But the outdoor amenities are imperative, and the outdoor amenities not only accentuate the development, but they also enhance the retail user, such as a restaurant or other items, because it just sort of embarks right into each other.
Ron touches on it. I mean, with the pets, if you can't bring your dog there,
Yeah.
you're going to have a challenge, right? And so, anybody that's doing any type of development, you got to figure out a way to allow people to bring their life. And so dogs are important. We saw that boom during the pandemic of people getting more and more pets. And so any one of our developments, there's always going to be something pet related. And then as far as pools and cabanas and those types of things, again, experience, right? Places for people to hang out. I haven't gone, but at the Griffin, somebody said it's like the wind pool on Saturday. I don't want to see it.
But you never been to the wind pool on Saturday?
But again, it's an experience, and it's what folks are looking for.
Amar, you want to weigh in?
I think it's also important to note, like when you're doing these mid-rise buildings, a lot of times in municipalities, you're not allowed to have a barbecue grill on your balcony and things of that. So making sure you incorporate that, having the proper ventilation you need and things on your terrace, your public terrace, to allow people to be able to actually barbecue. I mean, especially in a nice summer day. Hopefully we'll get a few of them this summer, You want to enjoy it. You want to be outside. You want to grill a few steaks or some burgers. And having that amenity is really important. But you got to plan from that early on, because sometimes it's really difficult to get done in some of these developments.
How is the development incentive landscape shaping up now? There's sort of the rule of thumb that you can't get a project done in Detroit without incentives. It's not necessarily true in the suburbs. What does the landscape look like for that? Are they required in downtown Birmingham versus Detroit?
So in private-public partnerships, that's exactly what we do. So when you look at economic incentives, and I know you've got the director of the MEDC later on today, and I'll be intrigued to listen, you've got to have the proper tools in the economic toolbox. Governor Snyder elected to say we're going to do it on our own. I love what Governor Whitmer is trying to accomplish right now, to be not only to have tools in the toolbox, but to also be shovel-ready, to be proactive instead of reactive. Economic incentives are needed in many communities. I think what the city of Detroit has done with its economic development, it's sort of handcuffed you. Because if you do receive an economic development, you also have to follow their community impact items, which deals largely with trades that you may not have chosen without using the word in public of what is being asked about you. So there is that connection. If you do a development in Detroit and you want a brownfield, you want other economic incentives, you have to also abide by their development rules that are impacted. You talked about Birmingham. I don't think they see that in the dictionary. There's no such thing as economic development opportunities. About the most they'll ever do for you is a development of economic development for a liquor license. So really in Birmingham, it's you have to make it on its own numbers. But if you're not able to with construction prices rising so high, interest rates that are taking place, supply chain issues, if you're not able to get anywhere from 5 to 7% of the development to be economic incentives, whether that's long-term economic incentives or immediate economic incentives, it's challenging.
Who else wants to chime in on that?
I think Ron covered the incentive side pretty good. I think it's the other things that the municipalities are doing as well, right? There's no surprise, we need walkable communities. that the younger generation and the empty nesters all want to be someplace that they can walk out of their housing and be someplace pretty quickly, some sort of amenity, right? And I think it's imperative that municipalities work with you to create that walkability, or they themselves take it upon themselves to, build that type of infrastructure, right? And so I think those types of things make our deal successful. I think when we look at stuff, building a parking garage is really expensive, right? But if it's something that you can do in conjunction with the municipality, a deal can be pretty successful.
Rob, you want to weigh in?
If you're talking the historic side, your competing state, a state south of us, has state historical tax credits, $5 million plus $2 million opportunity zone state tax credits. So you're talking $7 million of advantage for a historical tax credit deal in the state of Ohio vis-a-vis Michigan. Michigan says they have state historical tax credits, but it's not really been funded that great. So where does capital go? Capital goes where it's best treated. So you've got, an hour south of here where you can get $7 million of juice towards your historic deal to make things pencil better. Plus, you also have legislation sitting on the desk of the governor of Ohio that's changing that $5 million to $10 million, increasing the amount of the project from 25% to 35%. So we got to think about it here in Michigan, particularly in some of our, non-Birmingham type towns, how to make these deals pencil. And obviously, what are they doing using these historical tax credits for? Mixed use type properties.
Mark?
Yeah, and a lot of like Rob said, a lot of these, non-Birmingham type towns in these suburban areas, what we've been taking advantage of is something called the Michigan Commercial Rehabilitation Act, which is the 210 Public Act. And what this basically does is if you have a property that has a vacant building on it or hasn't been developed in over, I think, 15 years, I forgot the exact years, but what it does essentially is it'll assess that property the year you get this approved. Those assessments will be frozen for up to 10 years, and that's up to the municipality. You go through the municipality to get this approved, and in White Lake we got 7 years, so our taxes were frozen for 7 years. And that really helps us, not only for our retail tenants who, with their common area maintenance, they're paying property taxes and things of that nature, so it's passed down to them that their taxes are less to kickstart their business, as well as our multifamily, which really helps us kick it off the board because property taxes can be crucially expensive in a lot of these projects and be prohibitive at times. So, getting this type of incentive, and it is a fairly, paper-intensive process, but it is definitely worth it. And you can talk to any municipality about it and see if they're willing to do it. There's really no loss to them because, if you can't make the development happen, they're just going to continue to collect taxes at where they're at currently anyways. And school taxes and educational taxes will not be capped. So the school taxes you will still pay and things of that nature to help the schools and other impacts you have on that community. So it's definitely something we've been taking advantage of and we've had success in.
I want to leave the last 5 minutes or so for any questions from the audience. Wow, okay.
This is for Ron and what you think about the panel. It sounds like you're saying if you own office space, get out and get in mixed use.
I wouldn't, with well over 3 million, no, I wouldn't say get out of the office space and get into mixed use. I think the fundamental aspect of real estate is prevalent at all causes. Real estate is all about location, location, location. If you have the proper location, your office sector will do well. So I wouldn't say bullish, but I'm cautiously optimistic. At the proper location, office is always going to be something that's necessary.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering whether you've looked at PACE, whether you feel it might be part of the capital stack, and if you've seen any headwinds by using it. Thank you.
We've been seeing a lot of folks interested in the PACE project. So yes, the banks, some banks have trouble getting their heads around with it. We look at it as, hey, they may be ahead of us, but it's only if they don't pay their taxes. So we'll do things to make sure that once, the PACE program, you add the burden of that financing to your real estate bill. And so subsequently, the only time those can spring ahead of my mortgage is when they don't pay their taxes. So we'll do things where, hey, we're ensuring those taxes are paid. But yes, the banks consider them part of the capital stack and not more equity than debt, and it can help lower your down payments.
I always consider Blues Traveler to be really good music to have a panel too. Just
I
so
feel,
you
I
guys
feel,
know.
I feel like the
Oh, I
bar's
thought it was
closing
your
and it wants us to
background
get
that
out of
was
here.
coming to get you over
Right,
there.
right. Where's Closing Time by Semisonic?
Exactly.
Sorry, I saw a couple more hands up. Yeah. Yeah.
Other than what WeWorks or other organizations are doing, is that your question? Yeah. It's a very niche market. I personally would not invest our efforts into something of that magnitude when other corporations and organizations are already doing it.
I agree. I think you got to find a guy like Mike, who with Bamboo, to come and operate that type of space. For guys like us to do it, is probably too much of a headache.
I think we got time for maybe one more. Yeah, in the back.
I hope he said Rob.
Yes. My question is for Rob. What's the main challenge a developer would face when trying to obtain financing for a mixed-use property?
Liquidity?
Like equity or?
Yeah, typically, the developers always think their piece of land is significantly worth more than the banks think it's worth. And
Oh, it isn't?
And so they're like, hey, I've got so much equity. Come on, Ron. And so, yeah, basically it's, hey, capitalization of the project and how much spec you would be vis-a-vis tenants ahead of time. So I always like to start off, let's make sure the project is break even. That way, every month you at least can cover your debt service. So I'm not having to, even if you could afford to pay it, having to pay it out of your pocket every month, that's a lousy day. So I at least try to have, let's get 50% or whatever it takes to break even a project up ahead of time. So yeah, it's capital and cash flow. It's same thing as normal.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for participating and listening, and enjoy your lunch.
How about a round of applause also for Kirk Pino of Cranes?